To say I have a fascination with the Soulsborne series and From Software's games as a whole would be a massive understatement. There are a plethora of reasons why games like Dark Souls and Bloodborne provide such impactful, memorable experiences. And while I could delve into any one of those reasons this month, I'd rather focus on one element in particular of these games: the final boss fight. You see, From Software, the developer of Demon Souls, the Dark Souls series, Bloodborne, Sekiro, and the upcoming Elden Ring, are experts at not only creating engaging, challenging final bosses on a gameplay level, but also on a narrative level, resulting in climactic battles that hit you in the feels as often as they hit your player character. And since I'm such a fan of From Software's work, I'll be covering the final boss of Demon Souls, Dark Souls, Bloodborne, and Sekiro all throughout this month, which I've hereby dubbed From Software February. So without further ado, let's begin where it first ended, with... Since I don't have a PS5 yet, we'll be discussing the PS3 version of Demon Souls, which is practically identical to the remake anyway. Generally speaking, Demon Souls places less emphasis on its bosses than it does on its levels, at least compared to its successive Soulsborne siblings. Fortunately, the game pulls out all the stops for its final boss, Old King Allant. The elevator ride up to Allant's arena is slow and suspenseful, indicating that something important and likely dangerous awaits you at the top. And the cutscene that plays upon arrival reinforces this notion, as Allant's body language tells the player several key bits of information about his character. He moves smoothly and confidently, removing his cape and turning to face the player. That determined look and the slight bowing of his head as he pulls out his sword visually communicates that this man is ready and eager to disembowel you. And in case the player isn't the brightest augite of guidance in the inventory, the dramatic operatic music that plays over the fight highlights the tension of the battle and subtly informs the player that this foe is not to be trifled with. However, the music doesn't become overpowering. The organs is prominent, but the rest of the song is rather subdued, highlighting the soundscape of Allant's grunts of effort and the steady howling wind atop the tower. Even Allant's design adds to the sense of impending doom, as the magic wings emanating from Allant's shoulders make him appear much larger and more intimidating than he actually is. I'd also argue that Allant is the most aggressive boss in all of Demon Souls, but after performing certain attacks, he'll temporarily relent, taking deliberate, almost casual steps towards the player, as if he's just waiting for the right opening to strike them down. And without any dialogue, a lot of King Allant's personality is conveyed through his animation. His rapid, vicious attacks demonstrate his skill with his blade, but they also demonstrate his restraint. Allant isn't holding back at all in the fight, but he isn't attacking wildly either. He attacks with purpose, and even Allant's sadistic laugh when he grabs you and drains your soul level says something about his character. Oh, that's right, this boss can drain the literal souls from you and steal your hard-earned level ups. It's an absolutely insane move for any enemy to have, even the final boss. And while it's fairly easy to avoid, getting grabbed by Allant feels particularly punishing. Some may find this attack too punishing, but because I'm a lovely little Soulsborne masochist, I find it to be exactly the level of punishing that I adore. Allant practically bends and breaks the rules of the game itself to defeat you, and I can't help but admire that dedication to decimation. King Allant generally leaves few opportunities for healing aside from his more grandiose attacks, such as the charged explosion that consumes half the arena, but Allant can be knocked out of this animation if you attack him quickly enough. It turns the king's most devastating move into his most vulnerable, by rewarding aggressive play, which I'm always a fan of in Soulsborne games. When the player finally manages to defeat Allant, they've conquered every challenge that Demon Souls has to offer, and the game is over.
How did you defeat my precious demon? No human has an appetite for souls such as you. The rest is up to the Old One. If it is to be, then you shall be beckoned.
So, Old King Allant isn't technically the final boss of the game. The version of the king that we fight atop the tower is a demon created by the true Allant to rule in his stead, while the true Allant waits inside the Old One for the world to be consumed by fog and devoured by demons. You know, standard governing behavior. Okay, for those who are less informed about Demon Souls' story, the real King Allant ruled over the kingdom of Boletaria, and in his pursuit of techniques known as the Soul Arts, essentially magic, He awakened the Old One, an ancient, godlike being that spread soul-hungry demons across the land. Allying himself with the Old One, Allant took his midlife crisis very personally and came to the conclusion that the world was such a place of suffering that it was better off being destroyed and remade.
Surely you have seen for yourself the pain and suffering that fills this world. But fight poison with poison. God is merciful, and so created the Old One. The Old One will feed upon our souls and put an end to our tragic realm of existence.
As extreme a stance as this is, it's not as unfounded as one might initially believe. The events of Demon Souls are known as the Second Scourge, whereas the first Scourge of Demons likely occurred several hundred years in the past, when, presumably, mankind lost their knowledge of the soul arts in order to halt the existential threat of the demons. Yet this is far from the first or second time Boletaria has had a demon problem. When the player travels below the Nexus to meet the Old One, the sword from this statue plummets through the floor, and when the player awakes on the beach, dozens of similar swords are littered across the sand, implying that this cycle has played out countless times before. As we'll see with the other bosses I'll be covering later this month, From Software likes their games to conclude on a very subversive note. While the false king fought in Boletaria was a true test of the player's skills, the true king fought inside the Old One poses no real threat to the player. He has only one incredibly slow and pathetic attack that can be easily avoided, and even if you are hit by it, you can just move away and heal. The final boss of Demon Souls isn't some menacing warrior or deadly monster, but rather a helpless, amorphous blob. And the final battle between him and the player isn't as much a battle as it is a painfully drawn out execution. It's a very somber note to end the game on, but it forces the player to reconsider their actions throughout the story. Will the player character eventually devolve into a writhing mass of putrefied flesh like Allant did if they subscribe to his ideology? Has their quest to slay demons been worthwhile and just if all that awaits them at the end of their journey is a choice between absolute destruction and merely delaying that destruction? The morality of Demon Souls, unlike its world tendency, is not black and white, and whatever choice the player ultimately makes, whether it's to spare Boletaria temporarily from the Scourge of Demons at the cost of mankind losing knowledge of the soul arts, or whether it's to side with Allant and allow the world to be washed away and born anew, there's no clear-cut, morally righteous decision. Like the story of the game itself, Demon Souls' ending is ambiguous and up to the player. But ultimately, as pessimistic as the story of the world of Boletaria is, the story of the player is one of triumph, of overcoming impossible odds, and that makes the ending, regardless of the player's decision, an oddly empowering one. As much as I'd love to ramble on about Demon Souls, we have 3 more games to cover for From Software February. Dark Souls 1 is up next, so make sure to subscribe to Critical Rants so you don't miss me covering that game's masterful conclusion. Until then, stay safe, play some Souls games, and don't you dare go hollow.